What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome back to the new BCS as part of the Big Bets on Campus podcast. It is somehow week 12. I'm Stucky. Joining me, as always, the other members of the new BCS, Brett McMurphy and Collin Wilson. If you're new here, I'm watching on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe and like button. We cover general topics, talk about the weekend that was, maybe some futures. Gentlemen, as we always do, we will start with a key takeaway, really anywhere you want to go from the season so far. I got a long one because mine is the season's awesome. There's a lot of chaos to come. So I'm going to go through conference updates, tiebreakers, all that jazz. So I'll start with you guys. Colin, anything you want to note from the weekend or season?
Yeah, the SEC is going to a seven-way tie. It is a possibility that's on the table now. And I just think that we should all be prepared for a seven-way tie, everyone at two losses. I have an article coming out at Action here in the middle of the week on a futures watch about what you should be betting in each of the Power Four conferences. This SEC, I know you're going to go over it. uh, it's kind of crazy because it's like if it's like four or more teams, like Alabama has the strength of opponent in the SEC. There's some tiebreakers that Georgia has if they beat Tennessee. It's wild. It's absolutely out of control wild. But I think we should prepare for SEC having seven-team tie.
So if I pull up the SEC and if we assume chalk holds, Texas would finish 7-1 with the one seed, and then we would have six teams tied for second. Alabama has the tiebreaker based on conference opponent win percentage. If that were to occur, if the chalk holds by like 1% over I mean, it's a crazy tiebreaker. If so, it would be Texas versus Alabama if the chalk holds. If Texas A&M beats Texas in the finale, and obviously they take care of business against Auburn, then Texas A&M would finish with the one seed, and then Alabama would win a massive tiebreaker again. If Texas A&M beats Texas but loses to Auburn at Auburn the week before, that's Colin's scenario.
Yep.
Seven-way tie. And sadly, this would be the worst case scenario. It looks like we would get Alabama LSU rematch and watch Jalen Milroe run for 300 yards. Anything but that for me. Anything but Alabama LSU.
This this
Um,
this preseason Alabama SEC ticket that I have, 8-1, would be the most painful, hardest ticket I would have ever cashed in my entire life if that's the scenario that plays out.
yeah, a lot more chaos to come, but obviously Texas A&M controls its own destiny. Texas controls its own destiny, and Alabama, it looks like, does as well. And obviously, Texas A&M and Texas play each other. That's why there's three teams. So a lot more to come there. Brett, anything you want to mention?
Kind of bigger, even bigger picture than that. I think because of what can and will happen in the SEC, where we're going to have anywhere from one to three two-loss SEC teams left out of the playoff, while there will be one-loss teams from the Big Ten, namely Indiana and Penn State, with exactly as many top 25 wins as we all have, which is zero. I think long term, this is why the SEC will split away at some point. Maybe they bring the Big Ten with them or not, and kind of do their own thing. Because again, if they're going to be penalized for having two losses, but because they play each other and beat up on each other, and then sit and watch Indiana and look, Kurt Cignetti, he's my coach of the year. But you put half of the SEC against Indiana's schedule, every single SEC team in that top half is going 11-1. So why are teams being rewarded by not playing tougher schedules? The SEC's beating the hell out of each other. And so I think this will have a long-term impact. I think last year with Georgia not making the playoff, I know they lost the SEC title game. I think you guys agree they were the top-rated team. Certainly showed it in the Orange Bowl. I think that kind of started the snowball down the mountain. If you have multiple SEC teams, and I think you will, with 2 losses get skipped for a 1-loss team, I think this will just speed this process up. But yeah, it's going to be chaos. It'll be fascinating to see what the committee does does Tuesday night with specifically Indiana and Penn State. Are they going to keep them up there? Because Penn State doesn't have anybody left. Indiana obviously has to play Ohio State and could shuffle, but do they shuffle? They were 8 in the first poll. Would they shuffle them all the way out of the top 12 with only their first loss? I think that's something, that I'm going to keep an eye on Tuesday night.
Yeah, that's a major watch, and it could like set precedent for the future. And yeah, there's definitely going to be some arguments if that occurs. Brett, do you think that we should get Collin's updated take on if he thinks there's only going to be 2 SEC teams in the college football playoff?
Let's
Colin,
wait and see if he cashes his Alabama to win the SEC, Georgia to win the national title ticket, which is still
still
very
in
much
play.
alive. Yeah, but I think he meant to say at least 2 SEC teams would get screwed not getting the playoff. And look, I'm not Mr. SEC, but I agree. I do believe you should be penalized for wins and losses. But I also think the way that we are now with these bloated conferences, and you've got all these made for TV matchups, specifically in the SEC, also to some extent in the Big Ten. I think, whether we like it or not, we've got to go more to an NFL model where teams are not penalized as much for losses. The obvious thing is that the NFL has more of a equal scheduling strategy. You may mean Stuck, you know it better than I do. You may miss some tougher teams, but for the most part, everybody plays the same type of schedule. In college football, there's such a huge disparity, and that's why Nick Saban for so long he wanted the Power Five schools just to play Power Five opponents because that way you would be judged more equally. That way, if a Boise State or a Memphis or somebody goes 12-0 or 11-1 against Cupcake schedule, then you're not penalized because you beat your brains in against a much tougher schedule and had potentially 3 losses.
Yep. Colin, I apologize, but it does not look like I will be buying you a dinghy.
I listen. I mean, 7 teams at 2 losses in the standings. I was predicting a little bit more 3 losses, but that's it. It's not looking like that's going to happen.
Maybe I'll buy you a kayak. Do you have some water on your golf course?
Hey, there's still yeah, there is. Listen, there's still a chance. Committee thinks that SMU and Indiana need to be placed above these 2-loss SEC teams.
Stop.
Not going to happen.
Stop.
That ain't happening.
Stop.
ACC's only getting, well, I don't know. How far does Miami drop?
Right.
And if SMU beats Miami, is 11-2 Miami out of the playoff? I don't know. I think 11-2 SMU's out of the playoff because they would have no top 25 wins.
Who's Miami's top 25 win?
Louisville keeps in there. They don't have any either, Stuck, but they get the benefit of being at number 4 right now. So, there's a longer way for them to fall. No, I agree. Look, you know who has top 20 wins right now? Miami, Texas, Penn State, Indiana all have 0 top 20 wins right now. So, look, you could say the same thing about Texas, although they do get to play Texas A&M.
Yep. Yeah, the interesting thing with Texas is if they don't beat Texas A&M.
Yeah, but look, everyone's like, oh, they're 10-2. Who have they beaten? I mean, we talked about that's why we picked Georgia in their matchup earlier. Their toughest, defense was ULM, and their toughest offense was Mississippi State that they faced. So, yeah, but like the same way the committee's not going to leave out 11-1 Indiana, they're not going to leave out 10-2 Texas, even though they both have exactly 0 top 25 wins.
Going to the other conferences, Big Ten looks like it's going to be Oregon, Ohio State rematch unless Indiana beats Ohio State, in which case it would then be Indiana versus Oregon, assuming there's not, World War III chaos everywhere else. I mean, you look at some of these spreads, it's pretty easy to project what will happen in the Big Ten, but you never know. So it looks like favorite by far, Ohio State versus Oregon rematch. The Big 12, I assume there's going to be more chaos. BYU is 95% though to get to the conference title. They can afford any loss. Colorado is kind of 75%-ish. Iowa State, Kansas State, even Arizona State still has a chance. West Virginia has a chance, which is pretty wild. If West Virginia wins out and Colorado loses another game, and like there's a big tiebreaker for second, West Virginia wins it, which is pretty wild. So they still have a chance. But the most likely scenario is Colorado versus BYU. Kansas is going to have a major say. They play BYU. They host Colorado next week. So,
but do you know, Stuck, do you know who jumps up into that number 2 slot if Kansas beats Colorado?
If Kansas beats Colorado,
you know who has the tiebreaker over Colorado? Kansas State.
Kansas State.
Yeah.
So if the Jayhawks are able to beat Colorado, their Sunflower Showdown state rival.
You mean Kansas?
Yeah, if Kansas is able to beat Colorado, they actually in turn help the Wildcats get to the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, and then they would play Iowa State.
Yep.
Yeah. But then if West Virginia West Virginia could get that tiebreaker, which is wild. There's in the ACC, there is a chance that, so if you look at the ACC right now, Clemson actually has like a 30% chance. SMU they're like 90-ish. Miami is about 75% to get there. So the most likely path is Miami against SMU. They both control their own destiny. The simplest path for Clemson is to win out, so beat Pitt this weekend, then have Miami lose one of its 2 conference games, or SMU lose 2 of its last 3. That's the easiest path. There's a crazy scenario where Louisville could actually get there. If Louisville beats Stanford and Pitt, and there's a tiebreaker of 3 or more teams at 6-2, Louisville wins that tiebreaker. It's pretty wild. So there's actually, I think it's like a 10% chance if Louisville wins out that they would get in. So they're way on the outside looking in, but they're not completely dead.
So Miami gets the tiebreaker versus Clemson?
Yes.
Okay.
Miami gets the tiebreaker versus Clemson. And if Miami, SMU, and Clemson all finish with 1 loss, then it would be Miami versus SMU.
So Miami and Clemson both have 4 common shared opponents. Miami went 4-0, and Clemson had a single loss to Louisville, which is the tiebreaker between the 2.
Yep. So Clemson needs SMU to lose 2 or Miami to lose 1, and then obviously they need to win out.
Or it's the Mayo.
Stuck.
Yeah.
Do the Pac-2 now.
Oregon State is dead. They're a corpse, so that race is over.
So they're in the final. They're in the championship game.
It's actually a question for Brett. Like, does Washington State, because they are major projected favorites in the next few weeks. Do they have any shot in the world?
No, I don't think so. They right now they're at 21. So you look at the remainder of their schedule. I mean, even if they go 11-1, like are these wins really going to climb them up the rankings? Utah State, at New Mexico, at Oregon State, Wyoming. I believe all four of those schools have losing records. So yeah, they're sorry, out of sight, out of mind. And are you, I'm sitting there railing on Indiana with only one loss and no top 25 wins. You think they're going to put one loss Washington State in over a two-loss SEC team? That ain't
No,
happening.
they
No.
need to run the table.
Like 12 and I don't even know. I mean, that would have been fascinating. Like 12 and
Yeah,
0. I mean,
yeah.
you would have had a win against Boise, but I think they
It
would have
would have
snuck
been a
them in.
conversation. Yeah,
Yeah, because the way that would look, leaving out a 12 and 0 team, you know, it's one thing with four teams with Florida State, but with 12, that would, yeah,
yeah.
that might have forced their hand.
All right, so let's go. I'll go through quickly the others. Sun Belt looks like it's going to be Georgia Southern versus Louisiana. I mean, Louisiana's close to 99% to get there. I think 97% South Alabama still has a shot. Texas State and Arkansas State have like chaos chances. And then in the East, Georgia Southern is 70%. Marshall, ODU, JMU, Coastal has this crazy chance, but the problem for JMU is like they lost to Georgia Southern, and so it looks like it's going to be Georgia Southern versus Louisiana. Conference USA is pretty interesting. Western Kentucky's about 85% chance to get there. Jacksonville State is about 60%. Liberty has about a 10% chance. Sam Houston has about a 45% chance. A lot of these teams play each other at the top the rest of the way. So there definitely could be some chaos. Sam Houston State, they play Jacksonville State, and they could get that head to head. That will be a huge game for Sam Houston State. Sam Houston already lost to Western Kentucky, but they're one game back at Jacksonville State and play them. Liberty also plays a number of these teams as well. As of right now, it'll be Western Kentucky versus Jacksonville State, but a lot more to be determined there. Mountain West, Boise State is 98% chance to get there. They basically just need to win one more game. And who do they got? Wyoming, right, Collin? And then San Jose State this weekend. They're probably going to be there. Colorado State, about an 80% chance to be
Sweating
there.
Fresno. You only sweat in Fresno. The rest of the schedule's cake.
Yeah. And if Colorado State trips up and UNLV wins out, then you're looking at UNLV back there. But as of right now, good chance we get Boise State against Colorado State. American, Army, did they clinch? I thought they clinched, but I think that there's a scenario where they don't make it. I don't know. They're like 99 or 100%. Army is 7-0. Tulane is, I think, around 65, 70%. And then you have Navy, who has a chance. Why? Well, they're one game back of Tulane, and they play each other this weekend. So they can jump Tulane in the standings if they win this weekend. And then Navy obviously would have to keep winning in order to stay ahead of Tulane. Do you know who has a crazy chance? An outside chance? Colin, do you want to guess?
If you say East Carolina,
ECU.
Yeah.
It's not Rice.
It's not right, sadly. ECU has a 3% chance of getting there. Do you want me to run it? Let's say ECU wins out, which means they'd have to beat Navy, beat Tulsa. I mean, ECU has like the best offense in the country all of a sudden, and beat North Texas. And let's see if ECU wins out, and then they need Navy to beat Tulane, and they need Memphis to beat Tulane. If that happens, Army goes to the 1 seed. ECU, Memphis, Navy, Tulane, all tied at 6 and 2. It would come down to blended computer rankings. So I don't know if ECU would get in there. I doubt it.
Isn't it,
But
isn't it quite interesting that we might get Army Navy 2 consecutive weeks in a row, one for the conference and then one for the commander in chief? Like I think that they should just make them play 8 quarters and wrap it all up in one. But
you maybe you'd finally hit an over if they did that. If they play
I'm
eight
betting over
quarters.
both weeks. You can
Nice,
guarantee
nice.
that.
I mean, the total's going to be interesting for that game. They're like this year. See where it opens.
I'll tell you where this should be pretty good.
I know you open it at 78. All right. The
50,
MAC.
51 and a half. I know you'd be on the under.
Oh yeah. Under
Yeah.
City at 51 and a half. The MAC is interesting. Miami of Ohio, I mean, there's so much to come in the MAC. Miami of Ohio is like 50% to get there. Bowling Green is 50% to get there. Western Michigan's like 40%. Ohio is like 30%. Buffalo has an outside chance. Toledo has an outside chance. They're like 20% because if there's chaos and there's a tiebreaker at the top, Toledo is going to win it because of their conference opponent record, which would be terrible for me. I do not want Toledo to get there. But Bowling Green just went out and you're there. Miami of Ohio just went out and you're there. Because Bowling Green will play I shouldn't say, yeah, if either of them went out, they're in because they play each other. Bowling Green also plays Western Michigan. That's like basically like close to a elimination game this weekend, but you never know in the MAC. And then Ohio has an outside chance in the MAC. But your most likely scenario, Ohio has to go to Toledo, which is going to be their toughest game. Your most likely scenario is Miami of Ohio against Bowling Green, which I think are the two best teams. Did I hit everything? Did I miss any? Did I do Conference USA?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I did that.
Yep.
Did Sun Belt, American. I think I got them all, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's move on to some coaching news. I was shocked that Kennesaw State fired Bohannon.
Did they fire him?
Yeah.
They fired him, yeah.
He had success at the FCS level. First year of the transition.
Beat Liberty.
Beat Liberty.
Beat Liberty. What were the expectations?
Yeah, should have beat UTEP.
What were the expectations? Are you going to say the name of the school, Colin?
No.
Like their win total, I was sweating the game against UTEP because I have their win total under 2.5. That was their win total. Like I don't understand. How you don't give them another year? Like look at Sam Houston State, how much they improved from one year to the next. I was shocked by that. So Brett,
and then just the weird situation where the school puts out a release that says he steps down, and then he goes on Twitter and says, "I did not step down. They told me I was no longer coaching." So yeah, there's some weird stuff going there. There may be some stuff behind the scenes because I agree with you, Stuck. You just look at the coaching aspect of it. I mean, my God, give him more than 1 year, especially the win against Liberty showed the potential. But it's coaching carousel. Maybe Kennesaw State thinks they've got some magical candidate locked down and they need to move on to him. Although I can only imagine who that would be. But yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
What's even
crazy?
Even
the timing of it, like.
Yeah,
you need to do it right now. Like you're not going to the postseason. Like you couldn't let them finish.
Like they're trying to save the recruiting class or something. Come
on.
I mean, it's a farce.
Bohannon's the only head coach in the history of this school. Like, I mean, he's been there since you decided to have a program. It's like some Bill Clark type stuff. How'd that go when they when they went out to get Dilfer? It's just baffling. I mean, considering the offensive changes that they've had the last couple of years, like going to the triple, out of the triple, and they've been a feisty team on midweek Conference USA. It's really shocking. I agree with Brett. There's got to be something behind the scenes.
I mean, Minor Nation. You lose the Minor Nation, you just get fired.
They're the coach killers.
I was shocked by that. You know who I think might be on his way out, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on who might be on the chopping block, Brett. Tom Herman. It's gotten ugly at FAU. They fired what? I think their O-line coach, D coordinator today.
Yeah, O-line coach, defensive coordinator. That was on Sunday. Stuck. Usually, when you see guys fire their coordinators, it's basically that means they're doing that to save their own ass. So
Hmm.
I don't. I think Herman gets another year. You don't fire your coordinators if you're going to get fired. There's
That's true.
no reason to do that. Um, Matt Mitchell, our great with David, our great producer, asked the question of, are there any coaches that may be let go after before a bowl game? I really don't think so. I think Dave Aranda, he was obviously in a tough situation going into this year for his job security. They're 5-4. They've won their last three games. I think if the Bears get to a bowl game, I think he's going to be safe. Certainly if they get to 6 wins, they're not going to get rid of him before the bowl game. I think he's safe. Arkansas, we'll talk to Mr. Hogg himself, see what he says. That's the one I'm not real clear on. They need one win in the final three against Texas, Louisiana Tech, and at Missouri. So we know they're going to beat Texas and then lose to Louisiana Tech and Missouri. So I don't know what they do with Sam Pittman.
I
Do they move on? Do they keep him, Collin?
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be breaking news around my circles here within my 10-mile radius, but we might as well get it out there on a national perspective here. I'm internally about 90% sure Sam Pittman will not be the head coach of the Razorbacks next year. And it's not because he's going to get fired or because Hunter Yurachek wants to go shopping for a new head coach. He has had a issue with his hip that has limited him from getting around to practices. He's now using a cart. Um, his mobility is really hindering his ability to coach.
Yeah.
It's just very well known around here. And from the sources that I have that are actually in the locker room, the word retirement is being dropped more and more every day. So I just want to get ahead of this in saying if Pittman retires after the Missouri game, but says, I'm going to coach him through the bowl, I wouldn't be shocked. And it makes Arkansas my number one buy because I believe Taylor Green would come back the next year. I assume Petrino would stay in place. I'm not sure who would be the head coach. But if Pittman is retiring for a medical issue, that team will be more fired up to get into the Independence Bowl, Texas Bowl, wherever Brett says we're going. But that's what's going on in Fayetteville.
So Stuck, other than those guys, I think some coaches that could be uh maybe in trouble.
Gundy?
Trent, yeah, like I literally looked at this for 1 second and then laughed so hard. Oklahoma State is at 18 consecutive winning seasons under Gundy, and they're not going to have one this year. And they're like, Gundy needs to go. I'm like, you guys are absolute idiots. Anyway, Gundy's safe. Trent Dilfer, I think he makes it another year. He's only been there 2 years. Stan Drayton at Temple, that's another issue. 3 years. He's only got 8 wins in 3 years. He seems ripe.
He's done.
Temple seems right for a move there. Sonny Cumbie, 3-6 right now. If they lose out, it will be his third consecutive 3-9 season. I think his fate was sealed. Saturday night, I'm watching Jacksonville State, Louisiana Tech. Yep, I was the only one watching it. And Stucky was watching it too. Louisiana Tech's up 6. Jacksonville State, as you know, Stuck, hits a Hail Mary where the defenders all lined up at the goal line and the receiver was 5 yards deep. So it all went over their heads like a big surprise. Jacksonville State catches it. Game over, right? No, he shanks the extra point, but then Jacksonville State wins in overtime. Most incredible, one of the most incredible endings just because of the missed extra point. I think that sealed his fate. So I think those three, ironically, all Group 5 coaches, are probably in the most danger. I think what we saw with keeping Napier, which, say his name, Collin. I don't know why Florida would announce what they announced, because what if Florida just gets boat raced, seal clubbed, put in your favorite adjective, the last three games? What if Florida State thumps Florida and you lose out? Like, what? I don't understand the necessity in saying he will continue as the coach. Like the release didn't even say he'd continue in 2025. It just said he will continue. So I text somebody at the school. I said, does this definitively mean he'll be back in 2025? And they said yes. And I said, well, you should have put it in your guy's release because it interpreted a bunch of different ways. Look, they can put out as many statements as they want. They could still get rid of Napier tomorrow if they want. But I think with
That's true.
all the house settlement money that all these schools are having to come up with, unless you've just got a toxic situation, I think a lot of these guys that maybe even 3 years ago they would have cut ties with under these same circumstances, I think they're going to give them another year, mainly because of financial reasons.
Yeah, no, that's true. I thought the announcement of Napier was bizarre too, and it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't prevent anything from happening. But you mentioned that Hail Mary, crazy ending. The football gods have a funny way of working things out and evening things out. I wouldn't be shocked if Sonny Cumby on a Hail Mary later in the year saves his job against, Colin's looking at the lines right now, against Arkansas. Sam Pittman gets fired on the field. Cumby gets carried off on this player's shoulders in Fayetteville and is back another year. And guess what happens in that scenario? Colin's back on the podcast in a brace.
Cumby's still
in his
got
neck brace.
Cumby's still got to deal with an athletic director that was not his that hired him. So, but losing to Louisiana Tech by Arkansas, that always can happen, considering the program's lost to the Citadel, Toledo, you name it. We've lost to them.
I know you're going to say safe, Brett, but I mean, how much damage is being done to Florida State right now? It's
It's bad.
bad.
So yeah, there's Stock Perfect, another example. He fired his offensive coordinator, defense. It'd be quicker to name the coaches he kept, but yeah, that's another sign. Okay, this season has gone to shit. I need to get rid of some assistant coaches. It's like a misdirection. Don't look over here, look over here.
Yeah.
So yeah, Stock. Look, the money they owe him.
They gave him a boat through like 2030, right?
Well, yeah, but again, let's go. It's easy to look at it now, but let's go back in time. He had a contract offer from Alabama. He turned down Alabama. So, yeah, you had to match that, you had to beat that, whatever. You had to get close to that, or you're going to lose your coach that just guided you to a perfect regular season. So, yeah, it's easy to look now and say, what in the world's Florida State thinking? Well, if Florida State wouldn't have been proactive like that, he wouldn't have been their coach. And then your next line is, well, they wouldn't be 1-9 this year also probably. But yeah, he's safe this year. He certainly cannot have a losing season next year. Absolutely not. I think Collin, that's one of Collin's phrases. Absolutely not. He cannot have a losing season next year. This year there's no, he can lose 1-11. He's coming back in 2025.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, next year is the year. And yeah, he needed to clean house and staff. Under the radar one is there's no expectations here, and it's an impoverished program. But Kenny Burns, if he doesn't win a game,
I forgot about
he
that.
lost to St. Francis at home, and he'll end up being 1-23 over 2 seasons.
Yeah, they have not led in a game since almost a year ago. Like they've trailed in every game this year. They have not led for 1 second. And you have to go back to last season's finale against Northern Illinois. I think they led with 4.5 minutes left. They ended up losing. So that's the last time they've even led in a game. So yeah, I agree, but then it's like, okay, you get rid of who you're gonna get. Like if you just change to make a change, that makes sense. It's not like you're gonna get an upgrade necessarily. The MAC schools, unfortunately, are limited by the resources. And do you take a gamble on somebody? It takes two to tango. Who would want to come into that situation?
Yeah, it's bad. But last year it didn't matter. It basically he had no returning starters, but they have a quarterback injuries. Maybe he gets another year. There's no expectations, but it's bad at Kent State. Like last year, at least you beat the FCS team. This year, you didn't even do that. Maybe he could save his job with a win in the wagon wheel, but they're down to their 4th string. The quarterback is unplayable. It's pretty wild. Midweek MACtion, we'll go quick here. Collin. Tuesday, we got Ball State, Buffalo, Western Michigan, Bowling Green, Central Michigan, Toledo. I, I, it's getting up there. They get bet against every week. I know they covered last week, but Toledo should demolish Central Michigan. They can load the box here. Central Michigan cannot complete a forward pass. They give up pass explosives. That's basically what Toledo's offense is. They can't run the ball at all. It's hard for me to not see Toledo rushing Central Michigan. So lean that way. Wednesday, we have Kent State, Miami of Ohio, Akron against Northern Illinois, Eastern Michigan, Ohio. Ohio has taken money. I think Eastern Michigan's run defense is improved enough. They're just always so good as a double-digit dog. Now that that's 10 or above, I'll look EMU's way. And I like Akron against Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois, not a team you want to back as a big favorite. Do not profile well in that. Oh, Kent State, my Ohio. I mean, I won't bet Kent State. Do I want to lay 31? Kent State is down to this kid who can't complete a forward pass. It's Miami or nothing, honestly.
What's Kent State's team total? 2, 3?
A half. Those are my looks. I'd look Toledo. I'll be rooting for Bowling Green. Colin, I think you have some in the Ball State Buffalo game.
Yeah, Ball State Buffalo on Tuesday night. I took Buffalo. It's a game I made 6. I was actually a little bit shocked that I had the Bulls favored by this much. But really, why I hit it is there are massive rush explosive numbers in favor of Buffalo against the Ball State defense. So if I'm feeling a little nervous about the point spread, I think that there's going to be quick strikes that I can get out of and take Ball State on the other side. But as far as Wednesday goes, I mean, we've mentioned them so much on this podcast already. Kent State has not scored in 8 quarters. They haven't scored in 8 quarters. I took the under. I took under 46.5. It's at 46. I mean, if Miami wants to score 47 points, fine. I mean, I would expect nothing less from MACtion, but is Kent State helping this total? I'm taking the under on that one.
Yeah, I mean, Miami doesn't have a second corner, and Kent State has good receivers, so maybe they could hit like an explosive or two. That's the only path. Like they got to hit like a bomb.
Yeah.
The
Kent State actually has a top 30 defense in passing downs when it comes to limiting explosives. So I don't see Miami getting deep on 3rd and 4th down and long.
Yeah, I mean they just drop everyone back. That's all they're trying to do is they have nothing, so they're just trying to keep everything in front of them.
Rush one, drop 10.
Yeah, the only thing that Miami, Ohio, I mean, Ball State is interesting. I can't lay it with Buffalo. But Ball State, like the one thing that they were missing is kind of explosiveness in their passing attack. Their D is bad. Just throw that out there. But they got this kid, Justin Bowick, who was hurt all year, and then he recently came back. He went for 8 for 170 against Miami. So that offense might be a lot more intriguing with him now back healthy. He's an EIU transfer, looks the part. He's like 6'4". I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up at a power program next year if he keeps this up the rest of the season. Anything for Wednesday for you?
Yeah, the under on Miami and
yeah. Okay. Brett, you didn't have anything to add, did you?
No, good. Nice job on NIU last week. And I want to be the first to congratulate you on sweeping your best bets on the Saturday show. I'm sure you'll remind us Saturday, but I wanted to beat the rush. Yeah, get that elbow iced up. I'm sure
I got tennis elbow from patting myself on the back. So yeah, live show 10:30 a.m. Eastern on Saturday. All right, that'll do it for today's episode. Thanks to Collin and Brett for joining me. Thanks to our producer, David, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. You know the drill. Leave a 5-star review. Really helps us out. Group of 5 guys will be back tomorrow. Mike and Mike, make sure you check out their episode. Collin and I'll be back Thursday for the full Week 12 college football betting preview. Brett, myself, Collin, we'll all be back together on Saturday for the live show, 10:30 a.m. Eastern. Make sure you check that out. That'll do it for us. Time to go find some winners. We'll catch y'all later. Cheers.